This is a 4-year-old mare that I have 14 rides on. The first couple rides weren't real productive because she ended up needing to get her teeth floated, so I'd say we have about 12 productive rides. She was started really nicely but was still very green, so we've just kind of been working on all the things. Spent the first 8 or 10 rides, even just working on getting her to be real nice and soft in her face, give me a quick response. Also working on adding a little bit of vertical flexion in there. Physically, she's going to be the type that doesn't need a lot of vertical flexion, but I still like to always have their response to be to soften to my hands, not to just be stiff when I pull on them. So that's a lot of what we worked on at first. Worked on some minor things like moving out quickly when I cluck. It seems like a really simple thing, but it's something that people can overlook that they have to be taught every dumb little thing. So, anyways, here I am working on getting her to really step up underneath her belly with her inside hind leg, something she didn't really know how to do. And with these more compact, shorter backed horses, that uh, it's actually something they don't really do very well on their own. They have to really be taught. It's not that it's hard for them, they just don't need to do it on their own. But it's really important in a turn that they know how to do that, because if they don't, they're going to end up being kind of a stiffer rollback style. And for most horses, that's just not really the fastest turn. So we've been working a lot on that. So, and I want them to be able to do that off my leg, but I really want to get them to where eventually, if I have my body arched and I am looking towards the inside of my circle a little bit, like right there, I want them to know that that means to get into that position. And if I can get them to where they bend their entire body off my inside rein really easily, then it gets really easy. The barrel turn itself gets pretty easy when all I have to do to bend their body is just kind of pick up that rein and kind of bend my body. So that's really all I'm doing here, is just teaching her how to make that fluid circle. Again, it seems like such a simple thing, and really it is, but they really have to be kind of taught everything. So that's really all we're doing here. And you can see sometimes she'll kind of put her head up. I'll fix that. If she starts to get a little lazy on me, of course I turn the sound off. You couldn't hear it anyways, but if I cluck and she doesn't respond, then I'll um, either use my spurs or bump her with the rein, because I need that cluck to mean something. Like if I cluck, they got to be moving, because I really prefer to only use my spur as a backup, only if I really have to. So my voice needs to mean something, so I'm pretty particular about that. So that was kind of what was going on there. Give her a little break. I'm pretty big on giving nice big breaks during my rides. And just lots and lots of repetitions. Just because they can do it isn't enough for me. I want it to just be very natural for them and get to where how they just ride around in a certain way, and I don't have to force them into it all the time. It's just building good habits, and it just takes tons of repetitions, but it's worth it, hands down. Sometimes on these horses that um, eh, are not in good shape, I guess, or can even be a little lazy, which she's really not. And she's not in terrible shape, but it just takes so much time for them to build the muscle and endurance to work on these things, because, they don't trot little circles on their own out in the pasture. I kind of like to sometimes pull them around to stop them, like I did there. And the reason is, for one, it's a good thing to just be able to do on your horses. Sometimes we think of that something that only happens at the colt starter, but it's pulling around is a really great thing to just make sure your horses always do. But sometimes I like to go ahead and pull them around to a stop, because if I always let them straighten their body before they stop, and then I give them a rest. Then they're kind of, once they start getting a little tired, they're always trying to straighten themselves out because they want to rest. So I don't want them to be thinking that they need to straighten out like that before they get to rest. I want to reward them while they're being bendy. So I there's certain horses that I do this a lot on rather than letting them straighten out to stop. I just gently pull them around and let them stop that way so that that roundness is actually the thing I'm rewarding. So you can see here, this is getting a lot better. She's starting to be a lot more fluid and really step up under herself. There are points at which I kind of exaggerate it. I'm using my foot to almost kick her hip out a little bit. That's not something I would do forever, but just trying to make my point more clear. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm almost kind of exaggerating, bumping her hip out with my leg to get her to really moving around. So right there, when I am pulling a horse around, I don't like them to just snatch their face back. I like them to just kind of gently take their head back. Again, kind of a minor thing, but I just like my horses to always be thinking about being soft. So I don't, when I pull them around, if they give me their nose immediately, I still like them when I release to kind of take their head back slowly and carefully and not just snatch it back. Like that there, that's looking pretty good. So I went ahead and stopped her right there. Really rewarded that. That was a really nice little try there. She was really moving her feet and being very fluid without me really having to pick at her for it. So if that happens, I'm going to reward them pretty quick and let them know that if they are do what I'm asking aggressively and correctly and put some energy into it, then that's when they're really going to get some rest and some praise. And that builds a lot of try in a horse if they trust you to lay off of them when they give you a big effort, even if it's not always perfectly correct. You know, if you reward them for that try, then that that goes well. So the other thing I've been working on with her is quickening her feet. Again, this is every horse has to learn how to do this. I don't like to have to pull my horse's face much to get their feet to move. So, but I like them to kind of stay a little soft in their body too. And again, it depends on the horse. This mare's, very compact and maybe a little shorter backed, I guess. I don't know. I mean, her conformation is outstanding, but she's just built to be a very compact, powerful horse. And so sometimes those horses need a little more help actually being bendy than say like a racier, longer bodied horse. So for her, when I'm doing the turnaround right now, anyways, I kind of prefer to keep her a little more bent, and keeping her hind feet perfectly still is not my priority for her because I just spent almost 10 minutes working on her moving her feet. So for a barrel horse and for her, it's really not my priority. My priority is her being quick and light, staying light in her face, and really moving her feet quickly and giving me a big effort. Like I say, I don't like to have to drag them around in a pivot like that. I don't like to have to really spur them around. Um, I don't like them to hop with their front feet. Sometimes I see people, rewarding them for kind of taking that big hop. Um, and that'll happen at first sometimes when they're trying to figure it out, but I like them to move their feet quickly but still under control, because if it's under control, think of like a reining horse spin. The reason they can move their feet around and do those consecutive circles is because their weight is shifted back and they have control of their body. They're not just flinging themselves around for, 180 degrees. So you can see there, she's really shifting her weight back. She's moving her front feet quickly, but she's able to control it too. So that's great. We worked on that a lot with her. I would say my first 8 rides probably were just pretty much this, getting her front end to move quickly without pushing forward into the bridle. Why do I care about that? Well, if they have to push into the bridle or if they push into the bridle when they're moving their front feet, that's exactly what they're going to do on the barrels too. And then we fall into the trap of just throwing a tie down on or getting a bigger bit when, may good chance they just weren't taught correctly in the first place, that they can move their feet and take my cues without pushing forward into the bridle. So uh, that's been the most of that's what I've spent most of my time on her so far. I do lots of repetitions like that, just constantly picking up their face, letting go, picking up their face, letting go. I mean, it just takes, I don't know, hundreds, thousands, I don't know, guess I've never counted, but it takes tons and tons of repetitions to get them to be light and quick. And like I say, I really prefer to reward them when they give me big effort. So, I'm not going to go get 200 repetitions in one day. It's something that just takes a lot of time. Okay, so then I went ahead and started working on something else with this mare. It kind of depends on the horse. Sometimes I would have just stopped right there, and that might have been really all I did for the day. But that was all kind of a review for her. So I felt like she was ready to go ahead and do something else. Um, when I'm doing something like this, I don't really consider it working the barrels per se. I'm just kind of using the barrel as a placeholder, and it kind of helps me to figure out where we're at too. So here I'm just seeing if she can trot this nice controlled circle while stepping up underneath herself, moving her hip around a little bit, getting some good motion and movement. And she was doing really nice with that. The last time I tried this, which was a few rides before, it did not go well at all. She was just kind of stiff and wasn't able to really make that nice fluid motion. So kind of just checked that. That was great. I was very happy with that. So I decided to go ahead and try to lope her. Um, this is probably only the second day I've even loped this mare. I really prefer, I can, I guess at this point in my training career, I can feel things at a trot that they may seem kind of minor at a trot, and they are, but I know that if I went to do that at a lope, it would be kind of a mess. And so I spend a huge amount of time at a trot getting things really great at a trot so that when I lope, it's not just a complete mess and it's easier to work on at a trot for both horse and rider. So I decided to go ahead and try some loping again. You can see she's, more than anything, she's just not really strong enough to lope a small circle yet. It takes, you know, like I mentioned, they don't lope little circles in the pasture, literally ever. So it just takes so much time for them to build up their core to be able to pick their back up and pick their front end up. It's a very physically challenging thing for them to do, but alone, plus the weight of a saddle and a rider, it's very difficult and it takes a lot. It's no different than a person going to the gym. It might be a couple months before you feel like you can really even start seeing progress and how much weight you're carrying. Same for a horse. It just takes a lot of time. So I, but I think it's important because you do see a lot of people teaching their horse to just kind of sling themselves around the barrel. And they can, like, I could do that with her at this point, but I really prefer to get them to where they're strong enough to do it correctly. I don't like to gamble with how a horse turns out. I like to teach them everything correctly and have them physically able to do everything correctly because, I don't want to rely 100% on a horse's genetics and having perfect natural tendencies because, you know, few horses are going to do everything right. So I really prefer to just go ahead and teach them how to do it and take the time to do that. As you can see here, she's obviously crossfiring. It kind of depends on the horse. Some horses I would just break down to a trot and ask him to pick it up again, but she's the type that doesn't like to be told every little thing to do, and I don't blame her, neither do I. But if I have a horse like that, sometimes I'll let them just kind of struggle on their own a little bit. Just kind of let them do it and figure out that, that's not comfortable, that's not working. Let them kind of realize, figure it out on their own a little bit. And then when it feels like she's ready to break to a trot and then do it right, then I just kind of let her do that. So that's kind of what was going on there. So kind of loping some medium-sized circles here. I like to gradually decrease the size of my circle as they get physically prepared to do it. Um, so that was a really nice start. Obviously, that wasn't great, but those last couple circles were very nice. She was starting to pick herself up and starting to control her body, and I was liking what was happening, and that was much, much better than where we started, both for this ride, and it was much, much better than the last time I tried to do that. So I decided to just quit that right there. Since I was getting this video put together for her honor this day, I decided to go ahead and work on a few other minor things that I was feeling and kind of show some of the other things that we've also been working on. So for the rest of this clip, I'm showing how I work on them being soft in the face and keeping their shoulders elevated, both in downward transitions. So for example, lope to a trot or a trot to a walk transition, and then also how to get a nice soft stop. I feel like a lot of people don't teach this. Either they don't see why it's important, or they just don't know how, or don't even know how nice, a horse can stop. So when I ask a horse to transition down to a slower gait or stop, I like them to be soft in the face. They don't get to push into my hands. And the reason being, anytime they're pushing forward with their face, their weight's going to be on their front end. And not going to go into all the reasons why that doesn't work great. I think that's pretty apparent. So if your horse is kind of rooting in your stop, which she's not doing too bad, but it's there, and so we're working to get it better, but it's not terrible. But a good way to work on it is to start with downward transitions and being really soft in those. So rather than just going, working, loping, and then stopping and trying to work on it at a lope, try working at it just at a trot or even a walk. So I like to, a little front end movement in there too. Sometimes I'll do some turnarounds like that because again, it's the same idea. Their weight has to be back for that to work. So it's kind of something you can also throw in there once in a while to really emphasize for them to get their weight back. I kind of shifted directions here, threw something else in, kind of working on some neck reining there. I really like to get into where they will move off of just my hand moving and not having to pull on their mouth every time I give them a cue. So you can see I kind of move my hand and give her the cue, and if she doesn't respond, then I bump her mouth, but I always like to move my hand, let her feel that neck rein. I want that to be a cue that she moves sharply off of, so that I don't have to pull on her mouth to get every little motion out of her. Anyways, then I go back to what I was working on before, so I have to get them soft in the face first. Make sure they're feeling really soft and make sure they feel prepared before I ask for something. So if I ask for that downward transition, she's already dumped on her front end, then obviously it's not going to work. So I try to lope a circle first, get them nice and balanced and feeling good before I ask for it. So you can see, went from a lope to a trot, trot to a walk. And so how I do that is I keep them gathered up in the face. I keep my hands really solid so that they almost kind of push into my hands on their own because my hands are really solid and set. if I need to, you can see there I kind of seesaw my reins a little bit. I don't like to just rake it across their mouth, but just that little bit of motion makes it harder for them to lean on and kind of brings their attention to the fact that they're leaning on your hands, and you don't want that. So that's what I was doing there. Pick up a loop again, get her nice and soft and feeling how I want her to. That's a pretty nice soft lope there. So you can see all I did there was just slow my seat down, which is like that's all I want to have to do. You can hardly even really see it on the video, but I just slow my seat down, I keep my hands set, and then I keep driving her forward. That's the key that I haven't really mentioned yet. I guess I was trying to wait for the video to get to the point where you can see it, but you have to keep driving them forward into the bit. So that's why these downward transitions work well to teach this, is because if you go to a lope to a trot, you can still drive them forward into the bit and get their face soft again. Whereas if you always just stop them, if they push into your mouth, into your hands, there's only so much you can do about it without getting them to back up. And I wish I could explain that better. This may or may not make a lot of sense. I need to put some more thought into how to explain it. But hopefully you can see it. Just keep your hands really solid and go ahead and push them forward into the bit until they soften again, and then you can reward that. So you can even do it from a walk like I'm doing here. I just stop my seat, she stops, didn't push on my hands, that was nice. So the slower the gait, the easier it is for them, so that's why it works. These transitions work really well to teach them to be soft in their face when they're slowing down or stopping. And again, why does this matter? Like, why would I spend so much time on this? Well, again, if you go into a barrel and rate your horse and they root their face, your turn's not going to be great. That's really all there is to it. So that's why this stuff is so important to not skip. I'm just going to let it rest for a while here. Pick it up again. So throughout a lot of this, I'm also asking her to want to grow putting her head down, putting her head down, putting her head down, and I don't expect them to keep vertical flexion all the time. That's not actually what I'm after. What I want is for her just to keep a nice level top line and to get it to where that's a habit and I don't have to hold her head down there. I want her to know that this is just how we ride, that she needs to keep her head down and her back up, and that's just how we ride around. It's not something I want to have to hold on to her forever. So whenever I'm trotting around and messing with their face, it's not, the face isn't my end goal. My end goal is to just have them move around in a collected, balanced way whenever I'm on their back. So she's starting to get the hang of it here. That was all pretty nice. Let's see, when I sit and ask, she slows down really nicely. She keeps her head nice. She didn't push on me. At some point, I want it to be sharper than that, to have her gear down a lot harder. But for where we're at, that was great. Throw in a little turnaround there because, again, that's a really great way to emphasize keeping her weight back. So right through here, it felt like she wasn't really moving that inside hind up under her again, so I kind of went back to messing with that. She was feeling pretty stiff in her lower back, so I was kind of reminding her about that again. It was a really nice little transition there. She stayed soft, it was relaxed. So again, when I'm doing this stuff, it looks like I'm just messing with her face, but really I'm just trying to get her whole body where I want it. I decided to call it good there. She had a pretty good workout. That was a pretty big day. So as I talk about this, I want to go clear back to this video where there was a backup in here somewhere that I didn't talk about. And I want to talk about it now because it has to do with what I was just working on there. Not sure if I'll even be able to find it now. Okay, here it is. So how they back up also is, it's a similar motion, all the same logic, I guess, is what I've been talking about. So when I'm backing a horse up, my goal isn't to move the horse from point A to point B in reverse fashion. My goal is to have their weight back, to have them soft, and have them hustle their feet. So I want to just talk about that super briefly. That's something I've worked on a lot with this mare too. Like, she will back up, but I want it to be, quick and light. And this isn't a great example of that, but I just kind of wanted to point out a little bit that how they back up is how they're going to stop, and vice versa. It's the same motion. So just, I guess my point with going back to this is just pay attention to the details. You know, a lot of times when you're training, it's not the physical movement itself. Like I said, getting from point A to B is not the point. The point is the quality of the movement. Because, in today's competition, you know, our goal isn't to get the horse drug around each barrel. Speed is the point, and therefore how the quality of motion is important. So I don't know if that little tidbit was worth going back for or not, but there it is. Thanks for watching.